very good morning and welcome to Davos in Switzerland for round 17 of the cross-country World Cups, and of course the last race for the women before the Olympic Games in Torino. Excellent conditions, superb snow cover, but this is a tough course. Mike, it's at altitude and very close to the Olympics. No surprise to see one or two withdrawals from today's race.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, how some teams use this as the springboard to the Olympics. Some decide they want to continue with their own preparation.
Well, here are the conditions in Davos, -11, but no one's going to complain because the sun has been up over the hills for the last 45 minutes or so, and it is absolutely stunning here. One of the top resorts in Switzerland, and when you see it in this sort of state, you can understand why.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful place. With it being -11, it does allow the waxing being a very simple day for the technicians. And a quick look at the profile. There we are, long climb, 2.1 kilometers, really generally climbing out of the stadium.
So 10 kilometers the distance for the women today, and for some the last chance to impress the coaches to make sure they get a start at the Olympics. All the teams have been chosen for the games, but you've then got to get into the top four to make sure that you actually get a race. There will be those who go to Torino but don't actually put the skis on in anger. Well, this is their last chance to make sure that they do. We start off as usual with some of the national skiers, only two being entered, which is a bit of a shame, Mike, and maybe a reflection on the state of cross-country skiing in Switzerland. So we've only got Sandra Gredick and Sarina Bona who start for the Swiss in the early stages. Good morning, welcome to Davos. If you've just joined us for the last women's race before the Olympic Games in Torino, we've got a start list of 58 lined up for this 10-kilometer classic, the fourth 10k classic that we've seen this season. And Marit Bjørgen won the first two comfortably, but she's been struggling since then. Hilda Pedersen got her first ever World Cup win at the age of 41 in the third of the 10k classics. Today, any favourites for you, Mike?
Well, we're looking further back down at the favourites, or the world ranking favourites. I've got a good feeling for well, Becky Scott, who's had fantastic form this season, and also Shapalova, who wasn't racing so well the last time we saw her out, but I feel today that she's got a very good chance of taking the title.
Well, the big names starting late on. Sandra Gredick just getting the race underway. She's a local girl, her second ever World Cup. The first of those was yesterday, a very respectable 41st in the sprint event, so she's obviously fairly confident from that, but I was going to say pedestrian, that's a conservative start out of the start area. That was a little unfair.
It was a very conservative start, but again, she is obviously from Davos, Gredic, and her teammate here, or a club teammate, Boner, in fact, sorry, from Clusters, Sarina. And, well, she's starting more aggressively. It's flat out of the stadium. You can't afford to use your upper body, drop onto the poles and pick up some speed as you head out into the steep climbs up to 2.1.
So that's the two national skiers out on the course. Bona, the older of two sisters who race on the FIS circuit. Now we go to Voloshenko of Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan also with Kolomina going 26. We've got Malachova going number 47. But still, Kazakhstan, Mike, they come in waves, but they've never really reached the peak that they had when Vladimir Smirnov was around.
Yeah, quite strange. Normally when you have a great name like Smirnov, it does generate some interest and belief in the athletes from that country.
Well, they certainly made the effort, and Smirnov has put enough of his own money into the Kazakh team, which is commendable, but yet to make the top grade. Chandra Crawford now from Canada, one of a whole host of women who race started in Calgary and saw the Olympics back in 1988, and here they are all on the World Cup circuit. And in fact, I was having a look at the records yesterday, and I think if you took a club team, Canmore would be pretty hot in world terms. I don't think anyone else could beat them, with the likes of Becky Scott and Sarah Renner and all the other. Crawford, who came up and produced such a good result, getting fourth yesterday. From Crawford on to Rebecca Dassault now from the USA, 2 years on the tour, and she is in fact the 15-kilometer national champion. So one of the best Americans here today.
Yeah, the 15-kilometer was held on, well, 4 years ago, the Olympic tracks in Soldier Hollow, which is also at a similar altitude to here in Davos.
Well, what about the Olympic tracks, Mike? This is fairly similar conditions to there.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's very sensible for the coaches to have planned this race. Here we are, not so far away from Turin in terms of geography, travelling there, and a lot of these teams will be making that journey tomorrow. And I think it's a good thing to race here today for the athletes. Certainly for your racing mind, you want to be in the region and at this altitude prior to the Olympics.
So Natsumi out on the course for Japan. This is Kikan Randall, who another American with 2 national titles to a name, in fact. So she'll be chasing down Rebecca Dassault. That's who she'll get the splits on. The first 7 underway here in Davos. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll be back with the rest of the starters in this women's 10-kilometre classic.
Over the next few weeks, take a look at Eurosport 2. WTA and ATP tennis on the road with comprehensive coverage. ULED Cup playoffs, 16 teams survive, but now it's do or die. IAAF Indoor Athletics, breaking records is the name of the game. It's showtime in kickboxing, more fast and furious bouts. Don't miss the thrills and spills of Superbike. And the Bandy World Championships and the Great Outdoor Games complete the bill. The Winter Olympics are not the only live games in town. Check out Eurosport 2.
Share the Olympic spirit with Samsung and live the passion of winter sports until Torino 2006. Samsung, worldwide Olympic partner.
Welcome back to Davos. The 9th starter just underway. That's Wendy K. Wagner of the United States. 3 Americans out on the tracks already, getting an early start, and that might be favourable because it's going to get considerably warmer. -9 at the moment with the clear skies, but as the sun warms, I think we could find that the tracks, particularly in the meadows here in Davos, Mike, are going to get a little softer and perhaps a little bit slower. But it could work the other way.
It could work the other way. I think the sun is going to hit just a little. We see the sun now coming onto the stadium, and it does affect the glide factor, especially when there's 600 meters of flat or downhill into the finish line. This will heat up as the race goes on.
But as we're discussing, it does the waxing of the ski is crucial. But -10 is just about that margin where the skis start to squeak, and that's the friction between the ski and the snow, and you can just hear it at the moment as they go out. And certainly earlier this morning when we listening to them training, you had a lot of creaking, squeaking skis, which generally means they're working hard to get the thing to glide.
Yeah, indeed, the snow crystals at these temperatures, they're aggressive, and that's what that squeaking sound is under the skis. But absolutely an easy day for the technicians to find the correct wax to last the distance here, the 10 kilometers.
Elodie Bourgeois-Pin of France, keeping the ski moving. Now, what sort of wax do you think they've gone for today, Mike, on this classic? Now, just to remind those viewers who aren't familiar with the skating, the freestyle, you just wax the ski for speed. With the classic, there's a little section of around 16 to 18 inches underfoot, just on the front portion of the foot, that you put a grip wax, a stick wax, and different colours you use for different temperatures. At -11, you're in your green, certainly.
You certainly are, and all the different brands cater well for the waxes, but we're looking at green. Possibly some teams would put blue wax on as well, which is -3 down to -8, -9.
A little bit of extra blue just to help yourself get up this steep hill coming out of the stadium. The course here in Davos, there's a long start through the meadows, which is a gradual climb, but it certainly doesn't get your heart running to maximum. And then you brake left up the hill, and this is where the pain starts. And it really is a tough course from here.
Well, it's advantage Club Klosters ahead of Club Davos, the 2 Swiss girls here. And Serena Boner is looking strong out here. This is a big opportunity for her to prove herself on the world stage.
Now, Mike, you've just been down to the British Championships in Ruhpolding last week. A mammoth effort there. What was your impression of the state of British skiing, and in particular in comparison to the women's tour?
Well, interesting. Yeah, for the first time, it was Alan Eason, the first person outside of the military, who won the 15-kilometre in this technique, the classic. And I think that's good for the clubs in Britain, and especially the development. There's great development now happening in Britain. the club from Huntly and the junior development team, some fantastic results there. So I honestly see the future being the brightest, certainly in the last 25 years that I know of, within British skiing.
But the current state?
Current state, the biathlon side, shooting yesterday, looking at results there, not that good. It could be better. We certainly have fast skiers, but it's mostly on the biathlon side, and the shooting does need to be worked on a little bit.
So that's where the effort needs to go, into the development of the younger skiers, but it's a big program. And do you think it's fair to say that if you really want to make it to the top, you've got to base yourself abroad? You've got to be living and schooling and training and learning in the countries where they're best. Say Germany at the moment, certainly, or Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden.
Indeed, in this sport, we see the skills there, the body movements, the transfer of weight. You need to be skiing an awful lot within the winter period. You actually need to be on your skis. You can simulate it on roller skis, but much better spending at least 2 months actually skiing within the winter months.
Yeah, certainly anyone who's switched from roller skis to snow skis knows the difference, and it does take some time to adapt. And of course, if you've got snow all winter, you're certainly going to benefit there. Working our way up the first of the steep climbs is Madoko Natsumi of Japan, who's well, a veteran, already done 2 Olympic Games. She got 12th in the sprint event in Salt Lake City, which was her best by some margin. But Natsumi finding that the level of sprinting has gone up a bit since Salt Lake City 4 years ago. And I guess another indication of that is the fact that Shapalova and Sakenbacher, gold and silver in Salt Lake City, are no longer competitive on the sprint circuit.
Yeah, that is, the sprints teams are specialising. And what I noticed yesterday as we pick up on this, one of the steepest hills, and we saw a Boner coming out of the track there, going into the herringbone run. Yeah, what I've noticed yesterday is the sprinting, the age is dropping. We're getting 22-year-olds now becoming the best sprinters.
I don't think that's too surprising. And just to see the size of these youngsters, the amount of weight training they're doing. Certainly I was talking to a couple of young Norwegians who were doing 2 maximum weight sessions a week, and they had shoulders like Arnold Schwarzenegger and incredible power in the double poling.
Yeah, and that's why I think we're seeing people, or athletes, specialising. And I was comparing it to, say, 10, 12 years ago in cross-country skiing. We're getting much more specific athletes now and missing a lot of the races, which I think is sensible given the Olympics start next week. You want to prepare yourself especially for the Olympic Games.
Confortola of Italy working her way out of the start area. Now watch out for the Italians today. They are the masters of peaking at the right time, and if there was ever a year that they wanted to produce decent results, it is this year, with the Olympics starting, of course, in Turin in just what is it, the 11th. The first races go off. The cross-country program starts on the 12th, and the first races for men and women are in fact the pursuits, which for me in the women's tour is going to be the highlight of the games. Here's someone who could do well, certainly in the sprint event. Ella Jomla has been on fire of late. A little unlucky yesterday in the sprint event, fell in the final. I think she would have had that one in the bag, but she got tripped up on the last climb, and Jomla having to settle for 4th place. But it'll be interesting to see how she copes with the 10-kilometre distance. Good tempo, excellent tempo in fact from Yamichuk of the Ukraine. Now when she comes to the herringbone section, Mike, that's where the tempo is so important, but she keeps the skis parallel, showing good strength in the upper body, but I think losing some of the momentum as a result of that.
She made that very steep hill look easy. And when you're racing here at 1,600 metres, the lack of oxygen really does affect your performance. It's hard to explain it, but you're functioning on it. You're missing one gear really when you're racing at these altitudes.
Rajlova of the Czech Republic, and just to let you know, 1 or 2 absentees from the start list today, and none more noticeable than Katarina Neumanova, who has, you could say, cherry-picked her races this year, along with Becky Scott. I don't think Marit Bjørgen has done it on purpose, but Bjørgen is also absent. So of the big 3 at the moment, it's Becky Scott is the only one racing today. Disappointing not to see Neumanova, but she knows exactly what she's doing. And if you look at her last 3 or 4 seasons, when she races, she finishes in the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I think her statement when she raced in Novo Mesto, her home patch, she said there's 2 most important things in my mind this year, and that's winning at home at Novo Mesto and winning at the Olympics. Well, she's put one of them together, so I think she's going to be very dangerous for the Olympics.
Yeah, never taken an Olympic gold, and she is hungry for that gong to take home, and I think the odds are on that she's going to get it. But which of the races is it going to come in? I don't think she's going to get it in the sprint event. I think the 10k classic is a possibility. The pursuit is a very, very probable one. The 30-kilometer free, I think for me that's not going to suit Neumann quite so well.
Interesting. I
disagree.
Well, she's missed so many World Cups. You know, she's fresh in her mind and her body. I think she must be looking at, well, at certainly medaling in all three of those events.
But which one is going to be gold? That's the key, because that is what she's after. She's got silvers, she's got bronzes. She's not interested in anything but gold. But enough of Neumann. She's not even here today, but she will be a big talking point for the next week or so. Anna-Karin Strömstedt now of Sweden, just setting out. Decent crowd actually turning out for today's race. It's always a big occasion, but as we mentioned earlier, the state of Swiss cross-country skiing is a little bit disappointing. You have to wind the clock back all the way to the early 80s when we had Grunenfelder and Jachon Guidon before you see the sort of class that they were capable of. From Russia, Anastasia Kazakul has been named as a member of the Russian team. But as we say, Mike, getting yourself to the Olympics is one thing. In fact, I made a mistake. It's Kirkina who's gone through. Kazakul hasn't even been called up. So now's her chance to prove the selectors wrong. But it's all a bit late.
It can sometimes happen, can't it? You've been left out of your team. The pressures are away. You're angry that you're not going to the event of your life. And it can sometimes release the energy. It will be interesting to see how she gets on today.
Yaminchuk of the Ukraine has already gone past Tanya Manima of Estonia and taken 30 seconds out of her. So a very good start from Yakimchuk, and we'll track her round the course. Number 30. We're more than halfway through the start list now. Leonardi Cortesi of Switzerland, the top Swiss skier in the field, and she sets out with a certain determination. We'll see how she gets on later on.
The Winter Olympic Games from Turin, starting February 10th, live on Eurosport.
Esso, taking on the world's toughest energy challenges.
The Africa Cup of Nations, packed with sparkling talent, star names who've taken a break for the honour of representing their country. Tuesday in the semi-finals at 13:45 and 17:45, with highlights Wednesday. The Africa Cup of Nations, live on Eurosport and Eurosport 2.
Welcome back to Davos. The women's 10-kilometre now well underway. We've still got a few to leave the start area, but those who started earlier or very early on in the proceedings are already heading back towards the stadium to complete their first 5-kilometre loop. And it is pretty much, Mike, 2 loops of 5 kilometres, but the first 2.5k of that loop is very, very tough. And then you get some chance to relax. It's then that the technician's work comes into play, because it's so fast back down through the meadows.
Yes, it is indeed. It interested me seeing some of the athletes looking very cold on the start line. Now, with it being all uphill, this first 2.1 kilometres, you really need to have a good warm-up into this start. Otherwise, you really do. Your arms feel heavy, your legs feel heavy, if you haven't gone out there and put some sprints in prior to setting out here.
Krosteleva, starting number 33, just ahead of Vibeke Skofterud. Now, Skofterud has so much potential. She looked good early season. In fact, if you look at her record over the last 3 years, pre-season racing, she's been the strongest of the Norwegians. Is there something in that? Is it a fault of her training, or is it just the fact that she gets too tired too quickly as the year goes on?
It's a strange one, isn't it? You do find that with all the travelling, you're flying, you're packing skis, you're travelling, you're staying with the team, some athletes, just the personality makeup, become a little bit stale of continually doing the same routine every day. And I'm wondering if Skofterud maybe suffers a little bit from that.
Ishida of Japan going past Badilati of Switzerland without any problem at all. In fact, very nice skiing from Ishida. Good tempo up the steep section and a nice transition from the herringbone back into the two-phase, as it's known, to keep her momentum, and looking very well balanced. Quite an impressive style from Ishida, but still she's 4 or 5% slower than the best in the field, but she's got time to work on that. Number 36, Oksana Yatskaya of Kazakhstan. We've just missed Laurence, Switzerland, started. A woman who was disappointed yesterday to miss out on the qualification for the sprint event. And once again, our apologies that we didn't get to show the whole of the sprint. We saw the finals, and we saw Anna Dahlberg of Sweden putting in a good run to win her first sprint of the year. And the men's event also fairly impressive, Mike.
It was absolutely impressive, and yeah, when you're racing 4 or 5 different sets of sprint races, it really is important to keep the focus. Your body becomes more and more tired, especially up here at the altitude.
And if you're wondering who won the men's sprint, it was Bjorn Lind of Sweden, who's been fairly dominant on the men's tour this year, and I guess Sweden's best hope of taking a gold medal in the next few weeks. Arianna Follis now, number 38 for Italy. Now, we've been tipped off that the Italians are feeling pretty good, and certainly looking at their sprints, they're going great with Christian Zorzi back in his best form. He's got a chance of repeating his bronze medal from Salt Lake City. He's got to that sort of level, which is a real surprise after 3.5 years of pretty much nothing.
Yeah, Zorzi taking second yesterday. Great to see the Italians back up today, and I think we'll see that from Peruzzi, who starts number 41, starting soon in fact, and also Valbuza starting 45.
Elinek of Sweden, already done 2 Olympic Games, Elinek, but has finished outside the top 20 in just about every race, and she's got more potential than that. It's just a question of whether she is going to be on her top form. And it is so difficult. It's not just a question of being the most talented and having the best cardiovascular qualities. This is all about timing. And not only is every athlete different, but every year each individual reacts differently to the training. So it is very, very tough. There's a certain amount of luck involved in being at your peak state on one particular day in 4 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think a lot of it, though, is frame of mind. If you're going into the Olympic Games in a very relaxed frame of mind, confident to do the best that you possibly can, it takes a lot of the pressures away. There's huge pressures there at the Olympic Games. 17 suffering there, suffering badly.
Masato Ishida. Now, Ishida has already been past Badilati, so that tells me that the Swiss skier has very good skis for the downhill section, but hasn't got any power or strength for getting up the hills, and that must be a bit disappointing and depressing for Ishida to work so well on the uphills, but to lose all that time heading back down them again. And that's a feature of being in a team that isn't as well funded or as well experienced as the likes of Germany, Sweden and Norway, and of course the Russians as well. Number 4, Sarah Renner of Canada, from Canmore as well, and Sarah Renner has had a very, very good season, particularly when the tour went to North America and was racing in Vernon and Canmore earlier this year. Whether she's good enough for Olympic glory, I'm not quite sure, but certainly she has made huge advances over the last 2 seasons.
It's quite interesting, and in Val di Fiemme, Sarah Renner was saying, well, the real difference to her is that she now believes that she can make top 20 and top 15 regularly.
Well, we're getting into the top names now. Number 43, Aina-Kaiso Saarinen, and the Finns still have Virpi Kutunen to come. She starts number 53, and I know 1 or 2 people that fancy Kutunen for a win here today. She's going to have some tough competition. You've got to watch out for Shapalova, who goes 57. Marit Bjørgen, who was due to start 58, is not going to start today. That news coming through a little earlier on, and Kristin Stiera also withdrawing, who was due to start 46. So we'll get to see whether that information was true in around a minute's time. But here is another of the Norwegians, Mura Stemland, starting, and Stemland, well, a good classic skier, and that's generally been the way with the Norwegians over the years, better at the classic than they are at the freestyle, but it's slowly changing.
It is slowly changing indeed, and Stemland Mauro, she did come fourth there recently. This is the steep climb. You really hit this climb with a lot of speed, and well, I think we've raced here in the past on a 30-kilometre race, and every athlete was going over 75 kilometres per hour at the bottom of that steep climb when it was a very icy day coming through the fields.
It's a bit like being on a Scalextrics track coming down through the meadows. You pick up a huge amount of speed as you come down the steep section into the open, where it tends to be more glazed because it's been heated by the sun during the day, then it freezes overnight, and it's never quite straight. There are always these little jinks to the right and left, and then of course a big left turn before you hit that steep uphill. And that, of course, where we've had one or two incidents, lots of crashes and one or two falls. Going through 1.2, and Skofterud starting very nicely indeed. An early starter amongst the Norwegian team. Skofterud certainly looks more powerful this year, Mike.
Yeah, very strong indeed, and efficient glide, which is typical of the Norwegian style. They train so well from a young age.
Malahova now starting for Kazakhstan. Just missed qualifying in the sprint event as well yesterday, so that's bad news. But on the positive side, she'll be a little fresher than those who got all the way through to the final. And for me, Malahova likes the 10-kilometre distance. That's where her best results have come over the last couple of seasons. So she's certainly got a chance of finishing in the top 5 today. Violet Bauer of Germany. Now, the German women not quite as outstanding as the German men's team, but certainly with Sackenbacher and Bauer and Kunzel, they are a force to be reckoned with. And Bauer out on the course, starting number 48.
Next week on Eurosport, it's all happening live as the African Nations Cup reaches boiling point with the semis and the championship final. The Women's Tennis Tour dives indoors in Paris with Amélie Mauresmo, the new Australian Open champion. And the moment we've been waiting for in Italy, the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympic Games. The climax of the African Nations Cup, WTA tennis from Paris, and the start of the Winter Olympics. All live next week on Eurosport.
Live your myth in Greece.
So most of the stars out on the track. We've got one or two more to go here in Davos, and Petra Madic is the first of those, the Slovenian from Ljubljana. So she'll have plenty of facilities. In fact, most of their athletes coming from the Ljubljana region, certainly for the biathlon and the cross-country. Kranjska Gora, popular site for their alpine athletes. She's had a good year, Mike, but she's been very consistent, but has yet to produce that result that has make us turn our heads. A top 3 is what she's after. Valentina Shevchenko, now she's got a fair amount of my money on her today. Very light athlete indeed, but she's just starting to come back to the form that she showed 2 years ago. An excellent pursuit in Oberstdorf. Slightly strange technique, but she is a workhorse if there is one out there.
She is a true grafter. Just comparing to Madic, the athlete ahead of her, who's 1.8 meters, and the technique differences are quite extreme. Shevchenko was double poling as Madic was doing the diagonal stride.
That was Skofterud making her way up to the next of the checkpoints as we pick up on Verpi Kutunen. 80 points yesterday in the sprint. She'll be wholly confident with that. The question is, how much has that sprinting event taken out of the legs of Verpi Kutunen? Starting after Kutunen, it's going to be Hildegunn Pedersen. Here she is, the Norwegian, 41 years of age, and winning her first World Cup of her career in a 10-kilometre classic earlier this season. in Otapa. Now, she knows she can win now. That must have changed her state of mind, and I'm sure she is setting out today with that in mind.
Absolutely. Pedersen looked so focused there. You've got to be focused on the line because this is hard. This is hard work. You have to work through the discomfort and pain of this sport.
Larissa Kirkina looking very strong indeed. Back to the start again, just another 3 starters to go. Avi Sakenbaka-Stela, who, as we mentioned, took the silver medal in Salt Lake City in the sprint event, but since then has pretty much abandoned the sprinting to improve her distance racing. She still enters the sprints, but is satisfied if she gets through the qualification stage. She's got very good at the 5s and the 10s, and I think that's where her best chance is this year. Elinek, well, I missed her split time, apologies for that. We'll catch up on her later on as we go back to Becky Scott again, 3rd in the World Cup standings. Good sprinter, very good pursuit as we saw in Oberstdorf, and I think she's going to add to her Olympic tally when it comes to Torino, and I think that pursuit event on the 12th is perhaps the time she's going to get it. Now, Julia Shapalova of Russia, the World Cup leader of the distance races. That doesn't take into account any of the sprint races. Shapalova looked a little tired in Oberstdorf a week ago, Mike. Certainly didn't have it all in the tank. Lost ground on the classic leg in the pursuit and just couldn't make it back in the freestyle.
No, indeed, but she had just come back from, 3 days earlier, the national 30-kilometer race way over in Russia. So I was amazed that it was planned in only a couple of days before the races in Val d'Fiemme, but she's recovered since then, and look at the aggressive start. She is absolutely focused on certainly getting on the podium today.
Very dynamic one-step double pole coming out of the stadium, and I think that's probably the best start that we've seen. We'll try and get Shapalova's time going through the early splits, and we'll give you some information on those splits now that we've seen all the starters go. Marit Bjørgen, if you've got a printed start list, Marit Bjørgen was due to go 58, but she is not starting today. She's had problems with bronchitis. She purposely missed the races yesterday, has been taking a heavy dose of antibiotics, but it hasn't had the desired effect. So Bjørgen is forced to rest, and so we have an even bigger question mark over her form going into the Olympics, and that can be a discussion for next week. We'll see how she gets on, but I don't think the Norwegians need to be that concerned, because being ill, Mike, is pretty much the norm. It's not the exception. Bjørn Daly, he spent most of his time coughing and spluttering. When he was good, he was fantastic. He was almost unbeatable, but as a result of that, he did pick up bugs very, very easily.
Yeah, you do break the body down, which increases its, or reduces its resistance to picking up these bugs, and well, that's the name of the game, and a lot of the athletes do keep very healthy throughout the season as well. Some get broken down more than others, and do suffer these picking up bugs. When you're flying as well, you can pick up bugs quite easily, and they do travel an awful lot, these athletes.
Number 13, Bourgeoise of France. You can see the pain written all over her face as she comes up the steep hill for the second time of asking. So the 2.1 kilometer stage as we watch Bourgeoise. I can tell you that Sarah Renner of Canada has produced the best time so far. She started number 42, just ahead of Elinek. Larissa Kirkina of Russia, not a bad start for her. She's 22 seconds down off the lead at 2.1 in 3rd place. And Ashida of Japan, who we saw earlier on. This is another of the Japanese. This is Fukuda, who started number 14. Ashida started number 18. She's had a brilliant start, lying in 4th place at the moment, only 1 second down on the Russian Kirkina. So certainly we need to watch out for the number 18 in the same suit as this, the marble black and white, I think we'll call that, from Japan. 17 is Barilati of Switzerland, who we've seen suffering on the steep hills. On the flats and downhills, she's going very nicely. Seems to have quite a long pair of skis on, Mike. What sort of length ski do you use for the classic now?
Yeah, well, I've gone on to a 206, 2 meters and 6 length ski, which for me, to allow a good compression down onto the snow and allow a good grip, I think that's, and as you see, a lot of these athletes are using very, very long skis indeed.
So 206 for classic, and for skating?
185 for skating.
So Bona coming across the line, 31.03. She sets the target time here in Davos, and 31.03. We're going to see a winning time of around 27.5. Will you go for that, Mike, or a little bit more?
I think we're looking 27, close to 27.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. As you can hear, it hasn't really warmed up as expected, so the snow crystals are currently at minus 11 degrees, and you can hear the squeaking of the sticks as they're planted, and that generally means that the conditions aren't quick. Ishida, who we mentioned a little earlier, still looks comfortable, although second time round the loop it is starting to hurt as Voloshenko comes in for Kazakhstan, the first of the international starters here, but she can't match Bona's time, 31.13 her time. Now we'll just catch up on some of the earlier splits, going through 1.2 kilometers. Most of the big names are through there. It's Verpi Kutunen who's gone in front with a time of 5:30. She's pushed Renna down into second place. Shevchenko 3 seconds down. Great start from the Ukrainian. Petra Majic of Slovenia 6.2 off the pace in fourth, and Saarinen of Finland in fifth. We're still waiting for the last few starters to go through. Pedersen, Sackenbacher, Scott, and of course the last starter, Julia Shapalova, yet to go through that 1.2 kilometer stage.
Just saw Evie Sackenbacher there, long way off the pace at 1.2, 16.6 seconds down. That's a lot in the very early part of the race, so very difficult for her to come back from such a deficit.
Now, being so close to the main event of the year, if you're not feeling too hot in this race, Mike, if things don't seem to be coming together, do you just ease off and use it as a training run, or do you go as hard as you can to try and get your place in that Olympic race?
It's a good point. If you are suffering out there today, and this altitude does hurt very much indeed, as Shapalova, that's a safe time, 4.4 seconds behind. She's well in the race there. Yeah, I think you have to treat it as an Olympic race. You've only got 7 days before the first race at the Olympics. You need to push your body through the discomfort, and a lot of these athletes have been training hard leading into this for the final preparation.
Madoka Natsumi of Japan just finishing. We didn't get a split time immediately. We'll let you know what that is when we get information of that. It's still Bona's time of 31.03 that leads at the moment. I think that's going to be beaten fairly shortly, but I think she'll be satisfied with the way things have gone. Now, we've had a couple of other withdrawals. Anna Dahlberg, who won yesterday in the sprint, decided not to race today. I think the cold, the factor there. Gabriella Peruzzi, who won the overall World Cup 2 years ago, has had a desperate time since then. She hasn't started either, and we're expecting to see some good things from her today, but she's not out there on the tracks. There are the standings at 1.2 with all the athletes through. Kutunen, Renna, Scott and Shevchenko, the top positions. Shapalova well positioned down in fifth. Saarinen and Pedersen 7 and 8, still within 10 seconds of the lead. No problem there for them. They can pull back that sort of margin, provided they've started conservatively.
Und hier im Ziel, Bestzeit jetzt für die Stadtmann und Wendy Wagner aus USA 30:21,5, Vorsprung 33 Sekunden an.
Becky Scott, number 56, already gone past number 25. That's Vaina Leinen, who she started obviously a lap behind, but was also 15-20 meters down. So Becky Scott, not a bad start, goes through, gets second place behind Sarah Renna. So Canada 1 and 2 at the 7.1 kilometer stage. They really are serious about their cross-country skiing now, and their charge being led very much by their women, Scott and Renna. And of course we've now got Crawford, who we've got to watch out for. Crawford, an early starter today, started number 4. She will have finished by now, and we'll see how she got on. The red bib of Julia Shapalova, 8:01. She's dropped from 5th down into 6th between 1.2 and 2.1. But still in touch, Mike. Doesn't look as though Shapalova's really going flat out at the moment.
No, well, I know that Shapalova's been living very high and training here in Davos, so living at 2,500 meters. And she won't be at her absolute best today, I don't think. But it's good news for her. believe in 7 days' time and over the next 18 days of racing at the Olympics.
Bourgeois' race is done for today, and well, it's not very often that we see the hills on the World Cup course stop some of these athletes in their tracks. Kazakul really struggling here, and she's got to get a little lighter on the skis. Easier said than done. She's shattered when it comes to that second loop, but she's losing valuable seconds all the time. 23:31 coming up to the 7.1 kilometer stage. Not too bad on the flat sections, but you have to attack the steep uphills. That is where the time is gained. And looking at the statistics, Mike, 70% of your time is spent going uphill. So that's where you're going to gain the most time.
That's right. That's where you need your strength and your technique. As you say, if you're not strong on the uphills, you're percentage-wise behind the best, you're losing big time. This is the only easy bit of the track, really, the 600 meters down into the turnaround at halfway point and into the finish.
Fukuda coming through, and a good time for her. Apologies, the captions coming very, very quickly, so we'll have to use our on-site computer to update you just in case you missed them. We've still at the finish the positions at the moment. We've got Bourgeois of France leading with a time of 30:20, Wagner of the USA 30:21, just 1 second down, and Yamichuk of Ukraine in third position at the moment. Now here comes Ishida. She was going very well early on, 29:39, 30:20. I think we're going to have a Japanese leader in the early stages. She's still got over 30 seconds just to get inside Bourgeois, and she's done that comfortably. Excellent run. Ishida looked good to start with. She saved something for the end as well, and she gets a time well inside that of Bourgeois, 30 seconds clear of the Frenchwoman. So that is certainly a run that's going to get her a top 30. I think we might even see her in the top 15 today. Number 15, Lena Jensen, frozen in action. And, well, that's an interesting shot, Mike. The arms out to the side, whereas the old double polling technique was with the arms absolutely straight forward. But I think over time, the elbows have been allowed to drift out to the side, and it brings more muscles into play.
Indeed, and you can drop your body weight as well. Your arms are wide, you just drop your upper body onto the pole, so not initially using muscle. Good chance to see the lovely scenery in Davos and surrounding areas. A lot of teams do use Davos for their preparation. There's very few places or tracks where you can ski comfortably that are higher altitude than this, unless you go onto the glaciers.
Well, the alpine skiing here, of course, is also excellent, and a little bit of ski mountaineering done, although it's very severe in this part of the Alps. But as you can see, stunning conditions. Interesting how varied the conditions are across the Alps. I know a number of the French resorts are complaining that the snow is really not up to standard, whereas in southern Germany, Bavaria, they've got more snow than they've had for a long time, more snow than they want, to be honest, and it's caused all sorts of problems that we've seen in the news. Antonella Confortola of Italy coming in, another good run. Just under 30 minutes, the quickest time so far. Number 42 coming through, Sarah Renner, who's started well. We've been tracking her right the way through. In fact, she's got the advantage over Becky Scott, which is a little bit of a surprise. Now, one or two comments, Mike, on Renner's technique. The leader, just as we go off that shot, we'll pick up on her later on. Larissa Kirkina now coming up this steep hill, and you can see the contrast between those who are on form and those who aren't. Kirkina flying up, quick to switch into the herringbone, but you can see the nice light feet trying to maintain the tempo, but even Kirkina struggling at the top of that section.
Look at the power, though. She has absolute power. Slight slip there, so when you're kicking back, sometimes the purchase isn't there, but certainly not holding her back. That lovely sprint to the finish. And a good feeling for number 23.
Ella Jomla. of Norway. Now, what's her finishing time? Might yet to come up. Ishida still with the fastest time at 29:48.
This is a cruel hill to keep going back to when they really are suffering at their most. This hill is incredibly steep, and I'm surprised more of them aren't going out into the spread skis, the herringbone, as it's called, the herringbone run, to get purchase. With the cold temperatures allowing the grip wax to be getting plenty purchase on these ice crystals.
Vainalainen of Finland, 29:54, and she goes into I can't believe it, I haven't got time to pick up on any of these captions. We'll see what we can do to get them to keep them on just a little bit longer, but not a bad run from Vainalainen. She's got herself into the top 4 at the finish, and this race is all about producing a result that gets you into the lineup for the Olympic races, not so much about World Cup points. And that's something we ought to talk about, Mike, is that when we have an Olympic season, it completely disrupts the World Cup, and we see some of the big names, Becky Scott, Neumanova, just sitting out half the events. So the overall World Cup really doesn't mean as much this year as it does in the remaining 3 years.
No, you're right. And here's Sarah Renna, and she's another one who's missed a lot of races. Her teammate Becky Scott's, missed 9 out of the 16 World Cups. But look at this time from Renna. That is absolutely brilliant. Minus 42 seconds, or 42 seconds faster.
22:11, her time at 7.1. That is a devastating run. And the good news for Canada is that Renna has almost completed the toughest part of the course. It's pretty much downhill. Once she goes past 7.6 kilometers, it's fairly easy going from there. And she's not going to lose too much time, even if she does start to tire. Anna-Karin Strömstedt of Sweden, 30:14, 30:15, and that gets her into the top 4, just behind Vainalainen, who's sitting in 3rd with 29:56. But it's still Ishida with 29:48 who has the fastest time. Michol of Switzerland in 2nd, 29:48. That's an excellent run from Michol. Big smile on the face of... Now the Swedes, once again, if you missed out earlier on, Anna Dahlberg, the winner of yesterday's sprint, is not racing today. And any sign of a cold, certainly any sign of a sore throat, and these athletes will just pack their bags and stay at home. They will not compete if those are the conditions, and that's fairly sensible. In fact, that's one of the rules of training, Mike. If you've got a cold, you can train lightly, but you don't race. If you've got a sore throat, you don't even train.
No, you can do incredible damage, especially in these temperatures, minus 11 out here, and that is, you want to avoid racing if there's any hint of a cold, and you do have to be careful. Without pampering yourself, you have to be careful.
Renna, Saarinen, Kirkina, the leaders at 6.2, but still some of the big names to go through that stage. Violet Bauer going well for Germany in 4th position. There is Ishida down in 10th at that stage, so still very much in with a chance of getting a top 15 run. Number 31, Lena Andersson, the leader of the Sprint World Cup standings at the moment, who's having an excellent season, looking very good in the classic sprint. I think she'll be disappointed that the Olympic sprint event is actually in the freestyle, but she will get her chance in the team event, and I think the Swedes have a very good chance of taking gold in the Olympic team sprint.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and they really have worked an awful lot this summer in the preparation, mainly for the sprint races, or their sprint athletes, and preparing them as good as any team has.
Elena Sidko finally beats Ishida's time, 29:40, only just inside. Elena Sidko, who won earlier in the season, she won the sprint event in Novo Mesto in the Czech Republic, and she's looked very solid. But for me, her form just starting to drop away at the crucial part of the season. But she's got a good time, she's got the lead at the moment, but all the big names still to come. Number 53, Verpi Kutunen, who had the fastest time at 2.1, and she's held it at 6.2. Good skiing from Kutunen. She's got Shevchenko right on her tail. Now that's going to be an interesting battle, Mike. Can Shevchenko turn it up on the last lap?
Well, it's a lot of downhill skiing and fairly flat from this point on. I think she'll just do well to hang on to the skis there of the Finnish athlete in front of her. She's been passed by 30, and it is tough to pull some of that time back.
Looks like Avi Sakenbacher coming up, the second of these two athletes. Number 47 is Svetlana Malahova. Number 48, in fact, it is Viola Bauer. who's coming through. Mistook one German for another. Bauer started 48. 14th in the overall standings at the moment. Very good in the mass start events. I don't think she quite has the strength for the time trial start such as we've got here, where they start 30 seconds apart.
Just looking at 6.2 change in the run in the leading order there. Verpi Koitunen's just gone through 6.2, taking 15 seconds of Sarah Renna's amazing time.
Well, Pedersen, Sakenbacher, Scott and Shapalova still waiting for their times at that 6.2 kilometre stage. It's only going to be a minute or so before they're all through. They're coming into the finish. Larissa Kirkina, Sidko's time at 29.40. She's certainly got a chance of beating that. Another 100 metres or so to go for Kirkina. Should be comfortably inside Sidko's time. So it's going to be Russia 1 and 2 in the early stages. The seeded group still to come. Kirkina, the last of the non-seeds. And 29.18, that is a very impressive run indeed. So Kirkina, Sidko, Ishida, the top three now in Davos, and they've pretty much all guaranteed themselves a top 20 finish today. Now, what's Becky Scott managed to do? Sarah Renna's time of 19.46, she's outside that. So it is Renna who is the top of the two Canadians, and that will be a little bit of concern for Scott, who has looked so good over the last 3 weeks, racing in Novo Mesto and Otterper, and of course in Oberstdorf, where she got the win in the pursuit. Laurence Rochat of France just finishing her run. Now, this is the battle, Kutunen and Shevchenko. Now, the very fact that Kutunen has Shevchenko on her heel now, I think will push the Finn to a good result. And they're both, in fact, doing each other a favour.
Well, they are indeed, but Koitunen, as David Goldstrom said earlier, he felt that she was in great form, and it really does look good for her today.
Ellen Ek of Sweden coming in to finish. Ellen Ek started 39, 30 seconds behind Ariana Follis, who's just going to pip her on the line, but Ek will have at least a 29-second advantage when the times are worked out. 29.35, it's a good run from Ek. She splits the two Russians and goes into second place. Sarah Renna, well, we've watched her throughout the race. It's been an excellent run, and she's kept it going right the way to the line. 29.18, Kirkina's time is going to be absolutely slaughtered by Renna. She's worked well on the downhill stage into the stadium here in Davos, and 28.30, that could well be worth a top 5, and who knows, maybe we're going to see Renna on the podium for the second time this season. She achieved it out in Canmore when Becky Scott won. She was third, and she could well get herself another top 3 today. Excellent performance, and just what the Canadians needed.
Yeah, they've got such a good team spirit with Yves Bilodeau, the chief waxing technician. He keeps the spirits high in the team, and the self-belief is just running away with itself. They are such a strong team now, the Canadians.
Yeah, Bilodeau, a former cross-country skier himself. He was part of the Canadian team back in 1988, but he has a lot of respect. Not only is he a good character, he's a lovely guy, but he's also a top athlete, winning the Adventure Racing World Championships this year with a French team. He lives out in Annecy, and as you say, that's one of the keys. If your technician and of course your managers all get on, then you have this great spirit, which the Canadians, I think, have better than all the other teams.
Indeed, and with Yves Bilodeau willing to work so hard for them, a former great athlete, they have respect, they have belief in their whole team system. And well, there's Becky Scott coming through in second place.
Sarah Renna still the leader. Now we have Saarinen, who started only 30 seconds off Renna. You can see both from the time and the distance between the two of them that Saarinen has the better. Saarinen comes off worst in that duel, and so she goes into third. Kirkina now in second place, Ek in fourth. And things starting to be shaken up. The World Cup distance leader, Shapalova, coming up through 7.1, and she's not going to challenge even Hilda Pedersen, who's in 6. Shapalova goes into 7 and looking a little bit tired. Now, what does she do? How does she get her form back up?
Well, I think this is planned. When you're living as high as she has been, living at 2,500 meters, her body will not be totally ready for this race today. But I think that's in the greater plan for the Russian team. Rest them almost totally quickly this week, and by the time next Saturday comes round, I believe that Šapalova will be in absolutely brilliant form.
Well, there are the standings at the finish at the moment, Mike, but on that very note, what does Šapalova do this week? Does she go down to sea level to recover, or does she stay up high and just rest at altitude?
Yeah, I think she'll just rest at altitude, the long drive over to Turin tomorrow, and then just do very easy and gentle training. Maybe a couple of sprints leading into Wednesday or Thursday, and she'll be absolutely fine for the races at the weekend.
Mira Stemland of Norway and Sabina Valbusa both in the finishing straight now. It's going to be Valbusa who has the better time of the two, although Mira Stemland just marginally in front as they come into the finishing straight. We've got the clock on Valbusa at 29:54. She's going to be just outside that 30-minute mark, and that means that she's not going to get a top 10 today. So a disappointing run for Valbusa. Not the sort of result we were expecting. Mira Stemland looking absolutely shattered, and so the Norwegians have concerns as well. Bjørgen ill, Mira Stemland not going quite as well as expected. They've got Pedersen down outside the top 5 at the moment. Vibeke Skofterud just getting some dry kit on. That's so important. Despite the fact that it's -11, you're still better off stripping off and getting the dry clothes on for the warm down. Now, number 48, Viola Bauer of Germany. Looks like a good, strong finish. She's overtaken Svetlana Malahova of Kazakhstan. And Bauer driving hard into the finish. She's going to be sub 30 minutes, and it's going to be a respectable time for the German. Kakina is safe, and Bauer goes into third, just ahead of Saarinen. Very, very tight in those top 5 positions. Good run from Bauer.
Good run. 50 seconds, so that's worrying. 50 seconds is a lot to find. I know it's dependent on how they have been training leading into this, but 50 seconds over the half hour she needs to find in the next 7 days. Just looking down, Petra Maric at 7.1 kilometers. That's a great race. In fact, her best of this season, her position so far, 4th. Only 26 seconds behind.
And here comes Petra Maric from Ljubljana, who we mentioned early on. Very tall athlete. Struggles in the sprint events a little because of that, the close quarters racing. But Magic's putting in an outstanding run, 28:34, just missing out on Sarah Renner's time. But the Slovenian going into second, ahead of the best of the Russians, Kirkina. But still, it is Sarah Renner of Canada who leads, and it looks more and more likely that Renner is going to manage a top 3. Kutunen is the woman who's likely to deny her. And here is Verpi Kutunen coming in, sub 28 minutes. That's an astonishing run from Kutunen, and pretty much guarantees herself the win here in Davos. Big, big smile on the Finnish lady's face, and so there should be. 27:58. That is astonishing, but there's no doubt that those Rossignol skis were like lightning.
That was a great performance from Kutunen, absolutely. Look how happy she is, and well, what a feeling to carry into, well, the next race being the Olympic Games. So confidence will be so high, and just looking at all the Finnish skiers, Saarinen as well, her form's as good as it has been all season, and also Venäläinen down in 12th position at the moment.
So there are the top 6. Kutunen, who was second yesterday, remember, picked up 80 points in the sprint. She's likely to get 100 here in the 10-kilometer classic style. And of course, Kutunen hasn't competed in an Olympics. She was banned after the 2001 World Championships. So there'll be mixed feelings about her success, but she will put that behind her and just focus on the Olympic Games to come. And she looks as though she could well be in the sort of shape that will bring her medals in Torino. Pedersen of Norway, remember, she won that event in Otterper, her first ever World Cup win earlier in the season, and that's not a bad run, Mike, but she is almost a minute outside Kutunen's time.
It's a good run from Pedersen, but remember, she has had her back problems. Hopefully they are, well, in the past, but I know she's had an awful lot of work and missed some training because of that injury. But so quite respectable from the 41-year-old Norwegian.
Šapálova just heading back down towards the centre of town here in Davos to complete her run. Here comes Becky Scott, who was the penultimate starter, and Becky Scott is not only not going to win this one, but she's not going to be the first Canadian either, which certainly is a turn up for the books as far as Sarah Renner is concerned. Becky Scott looking a little bit tired, maybe too much racing in those legs of late. She'll need some rest this week before the Olympics, and the time 28:33, 34, 35. She's going to be outside Petra Majic, so it's not going to be a top three for Becky Scott, and she will be very, very disappointed with that. 4th place, and I think that's her worst distance run of the season so far. She does pick and choose her races, but maybe this was just one too many.
Well, from 7.1 kilometres in relation to Majic, she lost a lot of time, although Majic, we saw her attacking those final kilometres, and you really have to take it to the line. So Becky just tiring slightly in the closing stages of the race.
Last little climb for Julia Šapálova, the last of the starters and the distance World Cup leader. She should do enough to hold on to the red bib at the end of today. Earlier on in 0.1 kilometre stage was down in 7th place, just outside Pedersen's time, but only a couple of seconds outside Pedersen. She may well have done enough to overhaul the Norwegian at 28:51. No, she hasn't. She's lost more time. A disappointing run from Šapálova, who is going to be outside the top 6 today. 29:11 seconds, 29:10.7 to be exact for Šapálova, and Russia's number 1 also struggling.
It's a huge victory there for Koitinen, 31.8 seconds ahead, and that is a phenomenal attack she put into that race. Great power, great form.
Well, there you see the positions and the time differences. 31, as you say, Mike, between Koitinen and Sarah Renner. So a great day for Koitinen, a fantastic result for Sarah Renner, and with Petra Majic getting her first podium finish of the season, it looks as though she has timed things to perfection as well. So that completes the last race before the Olympic Games. Remember, the action kicks off on the 12th of February. The pursuit, the first run for the men and the women's, but the 10 kilometre for the women takes place on the 16th, and the 10 kilometre is going to be in the classic style. The pursuit, of course, a mixture of both. The sprints in the freestyle technique, the team sprint in the classic, and then the 30 kilometre is going to be in the freestyle. So all the classic specialists will be looking at the 10k to get their best result of the games. Koitinen now the favourite.
Well, that is quite phenomenal. The form, the power and her technique, she maintained it throughout, especially when this track is quite similar to the tracks at Pragelato where the cross-country skiing is taking place.
So Verpi Koitinen saying she's number 1, and certainly she is today. She takes the win ahead of Canada's Sarah Renner. Petra Majic started strongly and certainly looked to be on good form as she went round the second loop. She picked it up to move up into 3rd place ahead of Becky Scott of Canada. 28:34 the time. Majic takes 3rd place and her first podium of the season. Well, it was a tough run for Majic, but certainly the Slovenian will be delighted with the way things are going. That will move her from 13th up into the top 10 of the overall World Cup ranking. 60 points for her troubles. Sarah Renner, well, she was outside the top 15, down in 17th at the start of the races today. She got a 3rd place in Vernon in the sprint event earlier in the season, but she's gone one better today, taking 2nd place and 80 points, and a good payday as well for Sarah Renner. That really is the sort of boost that will have her flying into the Olympic pursuit race on the 12th of February.
What a difference self-belief makes. She's going to come into this season, well, believing in herself, believing she can place in the top 15. She was doing that earlier in the season, but now she's 2nd in the world. Some of the best not here, but I think that 2nd would still have remain standing if all of the best were taking place today. Fantastic result for Canada and Sarah Renna.
And Canada also getting 4th place with Becky Scott, so the Canmore Ski Club having an exceptional day here today in Davos. But no one can argue with the form of Virpi Koitinen of Finland. Astonishing stuff. Very, very fast start. We picked out the determination in her face in the first 100 metres, and she just kept it going. Built a margin of 31.8 seconds over the rest of the field, and Koitinen's best run for the season by some margin.
Well, and she even made it look quite easy when we compare her. There she is, hanging on her ski poles now, but well, when you win a race like this, you feel so happy, and it almost looked effortless out there for Koitinen.
3 second places already this year, but today she has bettered that and gets her first win of the season. There are the standings in the World Cup. It's still Marit Bjørgen who leads, despite the fact that she wasn't competing here today. She has Julia Šapalova to thank for that, for not picking up too many points, finishing down in 7th today. Anna Dahlberg of Sweden down in 13th, the winner of yesterday's sprint event, ahead of Kristina Schmigen. And Schmigen, another of the stars who wasn't here today, Mike, who we have to watch out for, because she's tried a totally different tactic this season to reach form for the Olympics.
I would love to see Schmigen, for the Estonian, coming up to her best possible racing for the Olympic Games. She's tried so hard to get the big medals, but they've always eluded her.
Well, there is no doubt that the women's cross-country is going to be a real attraction at the Olympic Games. Starts on the 12th of February. Don't miss it. Is it going to be Koitinen, Schmigen, Neumanova, Bjørgen, Pedersen? There are a whole host of names, and of course Šapalova of Russia will be hoping that she can just improve her form over the next few days. Well, we'll leave you from Davos for now. We've got some ski jumping coming now. We'll be back with the cross-country and the men's 15-kilometre a little later on. From Mike and myself, thanks for your company. We'll see you later on. Goodbye.